Welcome to Built with Grit. I'm your host and strategic partner in cost reduction, Luis Fernandez. And today we're joined by Mark Morris, who's been on the show before, has a very interesting story of where he's been last few months, right?
Yeah. Since about March.
Well, let's get into it, man. Just talk to us a little bit. I've seen a few of your posts and I thought it was really interesting. And I think it's worthwhile to get kind of this inside perspective of this particular career path, I guess.
Okay. So somewhere back around January, the swell that I noticed on LinkedIn of people just ready to do business and ready to spend money kind of just took a dive for me, at least. So I wasn't producing nearly as many leads. I was coming to the end of the projects that I was on. And I had a couple kind of in my hip pocket from customers that had done books with me before and thought for sure this one guy had told me, okay, it's going to happen. It's going to happen in January. It's going to happen in February. It's going to happen in March. His mother was passing away. So I am no fault on his part whatsoever, because I'm sure I haven't heard a lot from him since, and I'm sure he's really going through it. But it put me in a position where I had been counting on, picking up that revenue and being able to keep going. And then I just looked at it one day and my wife was like, well, you got to do something because we need groceries. And I'm already paying for XXXXX. So Tag, you're it. So she was like, why don't you just, get on DoorDash or something? So I started looking at it just to find out what the deal was, because my kids had done it in school. And I mean, I thought it was kind of a cool deal because it's immediate cash. It's an easy thing to get into. There's no startup expense. It's actually, if all you needed was a side hustle to make $100 or a couple $100 a week, you could easily do it. It would not be difficult whatsoever. So like if there's somebody out there thinking they live close to an urban area, they like to pay off some debt or something, yes, you can do that. It is very possible. So what I did was I started signing up for these platforms, and immediately what I found out was it was not as easy to get to as one would think, because there were so many people who had been attracted to this path during the pandemic that they had too many drivers and not enough deliveries. And as often happens, and you know this, the industry had kind of sprung up quickly in this vacuum because everybody was at home and needed delivery service more than probably ever in the modern era, right? I mean, this was the way that we did business back in the day. It's just how Sears Roebuck came to be in the United States of America before Walmart. They would send everything by rail, or by stagecoach. You can even order an entire house that way. So delivery was not a new thing. It just got brought back and turned into something a little bit new. Of course, there's always been food delivery. I mean, the pizza delivery guy is like an American icon.
Staple,
right?
yeah.
It's a staple of all of those juvenile movies that we watched back in the 80s and 90s. There's always one guy, and he's always a weed head, but he's got money because he's a pizza delivery guy, right? So he's the one that they bum off of, so they can get the $40 to do whatever it is they need to do to carry out their crazy scheme. Well, it's kind of the same deal. And in a lot of ways, it's real simple. I needed also a mental break from what I was doing. There was some other work that I could have pursued, and I needed to clear my head of other people's thoughts for a while and kind of get back to some kind of center. It had been nice staying home during the pandemic, at least for me. I know a lot of people hated it. I'm sorry for those of you who did not appreciate the break. But there's a hard reset going on right now out here. There really is. I think people stepped back from what it was they were doing, and they got a good look at it. And a lot of us didn't like what we saw. And so we're making changes. And as always, with growing pains, that's going to be tough. Especially, I think there's some probably economic turmoil coming from all the emergency spending we've been doing to try to keep everybody afloat. What other option did we have? But at the same time, I think it's gonna kick us a little bit coming around the corner. So that's where I was. I just decided this was the way to do that. I got it up and running fast, and I worked for a meat delivery company in my early 20s. I'm 50 now, for those of you who don't know. So, a couple decades back, that was my gig. full-time job, and it wasn't bad. It wasn't horrible. I did it because the boss gave me the freedom to do theater stuff on the weekends and in the evenings that I wanted to do. And it paid a little better than some other things. So I was already familiar with it in a sense. And so I was able to get up to speed probably quicker than most people, like finding addresses and stuff. There's just about nearly every job there is from janitor on up has a skill set that if you've never explored it as a career option, you don't frankly understand. You know, and I've done these things from learning how to read material safety data sheets to the cleaning supplies to all of that. And delivery driving, it's no different. It's learning how to know what part of town you're in and what the fastest way to go is, even if Google Maps tells you to go this other way. It's being able to spot which side of the street am I going to be on when I come up here, even though Google Maps isn't really showing me, because sometimes, it just puts that pin right in the middle of the road.
Right.
You don't know where you're at. It's learning how to decipher and decode. And I actually shared on Facebook about this, decoding apartment numbers, because for whatever reason, in America's larger cities, guys, those big, like 3 and 4 story, especially out here in the Midwest, it's big, and in the Southwest, we'll have like 700-800 units in one complex, these big kind of Tudor style pitched roof units, and there'll be 50 buildings in there. They don't tell you the building number, they just give you an apartment number, and you have to go in and guess and decipher, okay, how are they numbering this particular complex? That's actually my Uber Eats alert right now. I forgot to turn it off. Let me do that. Sorry. Okay. It shouldn't disturb us any further. Once I do this one.
Somebody needs their food right now, man.
I guess, it's crazy. But the thing is, the ones that need it right now, they want to pay you $4 to drive 20 miles and it's going to take 37 minutes. It's like, no, I'm not going to work for that. So that's what it was.
Yeah. So how does that work? What you just said there with does Uber Eats figure out how much it's going to cost for you to get there? Like, how do you figure out the pricing of the trip?
Okay. So I don't really know what it's kind of like social media. The algorithm is the secret sauce. They're not going to tell you how they come to these prices.
Sure.
Basically what they're shooting for is the very lowest possible price they can charge the customer, to be perfectly honest. I think pickups pay like $1.85, and then there's a certain amount per mile, and then depending on a few other things and like how busy it is that day, they will sometimes add a bonus on top of it. And then there's the customer tip, which is typically more than half of what you're gonna pocket when you do a job. So essentially they pop it up on a map, okay, and they show you, okay, we've got this delivery and it goes from this address to this address. It's going to take approximately this much time, and that's probably a Google Maps estimate, I'm sure, and it's going to pay X amount. So you have to very quickly calculate in your head, how much do I want to make for the amount of time I'm willing to spend? And by the way, this is where you should always start, people. When you're looking for work, if you're a freelancer, if you're running your own business, this is where you need to start. You have to start from your own reality. Don't go looking at the market and saying, well, everybody else that's driving for Uber Eats is making about $14 an hour, so let me just make 14. No, why would you do that? If there's guys who are making $37.50 an hour and you're going to do this, then be the $37.50 an hour guy, right? So you have to formulate what that's going to look like. So for me, what I did was I said, okay, I've had a minimum of $25 an hour for anything I've ever done, probably since my early 30s. I don't leave the house for less than that. I mean, there are times I do if I'm hungry, because you're self-employed. Sometimes this happens. It's feast or famine. Like we just bought a house last year, so we crammed every available cent of savings and everything else that we had into getting this property, because in the end, it's going to double our money, which is cool. It's great. I have no complaints, but it drains all your reserves so that you are now, back to floating right above the E line in your gas tank and stuff like that. So, you just have to look at that and calculate. So in other words, a $5 delivery, if it takes me more than 12 minutes to do it, it's not going to fit in my $25 an hour model. So I'm going to reject it. But a $6, delivery that's 12 or 11 minutes, okay, I can manage that. If it's $8, great. You're putting me up above a little bit. So that was the way that I started into it. And to be honest, you can't really factor in the gas expense and stuff like that. Although the IRS has gotten pretty generous on mileage these days, you can claim up to 57 cents a mile, which means that I'm actually in the hole on some of these deliveries as far as my taxes are concerned, which means that it's actually gonna be a benefit in the long run because the app actually tracks that for you.
Oh,
and
cool.
Then you can go back and you can it doesn't set it up to where you can print it out like a report or anything, but it keeps track of the deliveries that you've done, how far you went, all that sort of stuff, so that you can set up your mileage log and go back and claim that deduction, which is going to be quite a bit. I mean, a couple months, there were, I think one month I drove like 2,700 miles, wow, doing deliveries. So, and that's going to add up because that's like $1,300 right there. So you just start looking at what that looks like, and it kind of, it evens out a little bit. In the long run, it's going to give you some benefit, but it can get kind of pricey.
So did you take this as a full-time, like you treat it like a full-time job, 40 hours a week type thing? Or
for about 4 months I did. Yeah. Because, so I've also done a lot of the home remodeling and construction and stuff like that. But the problem is, in the process, I earned myself about 2 inches worth of spinal arthritis between my shoulders. So I can do about 4 hours of heavy lifting without needing some pretty serious painkillers, and then I'm out. So I can't really do much of that for hire anymore.
Yeah.
So that would be my normal go-to, up until about 2 years ago, when that really started bothering me. That was where I would go if I just needed some extra money, or it was Christmas time or whatever.
Yeah.
I'd go build a deck or stay in somebody's cabinets or hang doors or whatever.
Right.
And it was great. It worked well. But now I'm in a position where that's tough to do. So, and plus, if I want to do something like that, I've still got a bunch of projects in this house to finish. So, well, I mean, it's a 3,400 square foot house. It's a big house.
Yeah.
So,
so what were you making on that 40 hours? Were you hitting your $25 an hour kind of?
I was getting close. So, and it was probably more. So, okay. So when I started, the first week I made about $300, because I was just feeling it out and trying to figure out, what I can do. Learning that I could get into more than one app so that I could, have more than one delivery going at the same time, stuff like that. But by the second week, I think I made $900 that week. And I quickly got up to where I figured it out, kind of calculated what I needed to make, because I also wanted some time to work on some other things. And so I ended up with an average of about $150 a day. So and I was working basically 5 days a week. But if I needed to take time off, I could. Then I could just pick up some deliveries on a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon or whatever. And actually, weekends usually pay a little better. So, it's a way that you kind of fit it in as you can. If you can work during the busy times, which is dinner, and lunch rush, which lunch rush was fine, but dinner was hard for me because we were picking up the kids from school and I want to be there for, family time and stuff. So I didn't do as many dinner deliveries as I could have. So I probably could have done a little bit better.
Yeah.
A single guy who didn't have a family, who was just concerned with, making enough to make his rent, he could probably do it and have a pretty decent life in about 30 hours a week.
Wow. So what are some of the unseen challenges with this one?
Okay, well, so one thing that happens to you probably more than it should is the wait time. Okay, so you end up donating a lot of time to the cause because you are an independent contractor.
Hmm.
And this is something that people don't really understand. I know you're kind of in this position on things too. If you're an independent contractor, you can't just look at, okay, I want to make 17 bucks an hour, because that's what everybody's that's kind of a starting base point that most people want to earn these days, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you earn 17 bucks an hour and then you have to pay your own unemployment tax, then immediately, you're really only making 14 bucks an hour. By the time you cover that portion that your employer would have contributed, it's 20%, maybe a little bit more, depending on where you are and how your state has it set up. And you got to factor that in, right? Plus, if you're 1099, it's not under the table. You're going to get that document at the end of the year, and you're going to have to account for this to the IRS. It's not money you can just try to squirrel away and not say anything about. So you've got to factor that in. So I think that's one of the things that people miss when they go into a 1099 or an independent contractor situation. If you are looking to make 25 bucks an hour, realistically, you need to make 35 or 40 to really clear that. Plus, you have to factor in your expenses. If your car breaks down on you, that's, a thing. Whatever the additional mileage is, dropping the resale of your vehicle. My vehicle is, it was already old enough that it didn't matter. It's a Mitsubishi. It's probably going to run another 100,000 miles. So I wasn't that worried about putting miles on it. They're pretty tough and it runs good. So I didn't have any mechanical issues or stuff like that. But my son-in-law, he ran into that quite a bit, where he was having, to spend money on car repairs because of the additional stress he was putting on his vehicle. So that's one of the things. Then another thing that you don't see coming is cancellations. Okay. So I'm now, when I drive, and I'm pulling back from it because I'm starting to get more. I thought I shut that off. I obviously did not. When I am driving, I'm driving on basically 3 different apps right now. 2 food delivery apps. No, 2, let's see, 4 different apps. 2 kind of meal delivery apps, and then one called Roadie, which is mostly small freight, like Home Depot deliveries and stuff like that. Another one that's called Dispatch IT, which if they would get their business together and get some more customers, they'd be great, because they pay about 45 bucks an hour. It's great. Like that could be a legit job for somebody right there. But the pitfall is you can pick up what you think is a $30 job. Okay. That's going to take you 25 minutes. For example, on Roadie, they do a lot of tire deliveries here in the Oklahoma City metro. And because Oklahoma City was built as an automobile city, and also it had a light rail system that allowed it to spread out more when it was being founded.
Yeah.
So the distances between things here, driving 30 minutes, that's nothing, it's a big place. It's really spread out. So these tire deliveries usually pay somewhere between 25 and 40 bucks for about 30 minutes worth of work.
Okay.
There's not enough of them to keep you busy. If there was, then you could just round robin that all day long.
Yeah.
Make 60 bucks an hour and forget the rest of the world, because it's such an easy job. If you could make 60 bucks an hour at it, everybody would want to do it. I'm serious, because you don't have anybody breathing down your neck. You don't have, you have customers, but it's not like a big customer satisfaction job. There's no deliverables really. You put stuff in your car, you drive it, you unload it, you get paid. You get paid the same day, So, there's a lot of beauty and simplicity in it, right? But you can show up thinking you're going to make 35 bucks, and then that order doesn't even exist in the system, from the place that's dispatching it. And then you spend 20 or 30 minutes discussing this with whichever app you're on, so that they can pay you about $4 for a cancellation fee. And now you've driven half an hour, you've spent $5 in gas to get there. You thought you had this day set up where it was going to go pretty smooth and you're going to earn your stuff and get home. And now you're in the hole. So
what causes that cancellation?
It's mostly technology glitches. Like sometimes you'll show up and they'll say, oh, you're the 3rd driver to try and claim that. The first guy took it, and then there were 3 more after him. And it just hasn't gotten booted back out of the system yet. Sometimes they just have no clue what you're talking about. Sometimes the actual order will be canceled. Sometimes they won't have the product. to deliver. Uh, it just varies.
So that sounds like it happened to you several times. This wasn't like a
Well,
one.
yeah, I've been taking 15 to 20 deliveries a day over about a 6-month period.
Okay.
So yeah, it's going to happen to you. And it happens on every app. None of them are immune to it. To be perfectly frank, as far as like being responsive to drivers, Uber, which has a reputation for kind of being harsh, is actually the one that has responded the best and is quicker to go ahead and cover that. There are also times when you get to a delivery site and you just cannot complete the delivery. But if you fulfilled the journey and you picked up the actual physical product, then depending on what it is, like if it's a meal, then they either tell you to leave it or they tell you to toss it. So, but you still get paid. You get whatever that was going to be. Sometimes you don't get the tip because the customer has time to change that in the app. And if it's like, let's say you picked up some hardware from Home Depot or a grocery order at Walmart, they're going to want you to return the merchandise. So a lot of times you'll actually get paid double on those because you might get $9 to drive 15 minutes to deliver somebody's stuff. And then you're going to get another $9 to take it back and turn it back in. There's some hassle involved in it. You have to check it in on an app. You got to get an employee to actually recognize that you're there.
Yeah.
Which is tough right now because everybody's shorthanded. So there's that. The other way that you can really kind of get strung up is what I call tip baiters. And that's people who will tell you they're going to give you a $25 tip to bring them a cheeseburger, 4 minutes from the restaurant. And you go and it takes, 30 minutes to get the burger. And then the traffic is a nightmare. So the whole thing takes you an hour. And by the time you deliver it, they don't tip you at all. Or you might even make the 4-minute window and still not get tipped. So what they put in is not necessarily what comes out.
Yeah. Oh, that makes so they can put that in as a comment when they're ordering it or whatever. And then
essentially what the app will do is it tells you the expected earnings on Uber and most of the food delivery apps. They have about an hour window to change the tip, but sometimes it goes up. Sometimes you end up with an extra $20 and you're like, oh, bonus.
yeah.
But more often than not, it's pretty close to what the estimate was, or a little bit more, or a few cents less. And so it kind of averages out. But there are times when you just really get stuck.
So you were driving people and products.
No, I'm not driving any people.
Okay.
No, I didn't want to deal with that.
You're doing products through Uber? I didn't know you could do that.
So Uber contracts with a lot of different places. The only place that I think I've actually delivered like hard goods with Uber is Walmart. They do 2 different types, which is grocery deliveries, and then also what they call their express deliveries, which is mostly pharmacy stuff, small toys, a bag of jeans, whatever.
Yeah.
Usually when you pick those up, there's no tip on that, but you're going to end up with 6 or 7 deliveries in a row.
Oh, nice.
So it might be an hour's worth of work and it's $30. Okay. So it's not terrible. You listen to a podcast, you go do your thing, you have a little cash at the end of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that's how that works. With the other app, Roadie, they do not do any food deliveries at all. I'm trying to think. I don't even think they do Walmart grocery deliveries. I think it is just hard goods. They're primarily focused on their main customers are, there's a company called Northern Tool. You might be taking some bar stools to a guy to put in his office or whatever. If runs a cabinet shop. I did that the other day. They deliver for Tractor Supply, guys like that, and then the Walmart stuff. So it's kind of varied, which makes it interesting, but you never really know what you're getting into either. So
yeah, like, can you tell what you're gonna do? Like, I'm thinking tire deliveries, right? Like, I drive a Prius. There's limits on what I can pick up. Like, does it tell you what kind of vehicle you need or what?
Well, you're going to put in your vehicle type on most of them, and then it's going to calculate which deliveries are available to you based on, what your access is. So I drive a mid-sized SUV with a hatchback. It'll hold, most things that are up to 5 feet long and 2.5 feet wide and 100 pounds, I can easily make anything work.
Yeah.
So it's pretty versatile. But then there are sometimes where with roadie, they do what they call huge orders where you need a trailer.
Hmm.
So like Tractor Supplies, maybe stock tanks or whatever, you're going to need 3 guys and it's going to, require a 14-foot trailer to get it there. But they're going to pay you $75 and it's going to take you 15 minutes to do it.
Mm. Yeah, to do the job 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
gather
you
all,
just
get
throw
everything.
it on there, you drive 3 miles, you throw it off, you're done.
Yeah. Hmm. It's pretty cool. So, how would you rate your success then? I mean, you did this for 4 months. Now you're back. I actually had people message me and were like, "Hey, have you heard from Mark? Like, he's falling off the planet." Man, I was like, "No, actually."
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's the first time I've heard that. I got a few inbox messages and I responded to some of them, but I honestly just checked out of LinkedIn altogether. It was, I think it was that stint that I spent, not too long after this last year where I was doing the 10 posts a day thing. And I did that for 100 days straight,
Yeah.
thinking that some kind of momentum would get built out of that, because
Mhm.
I already had somewhat of a presence on LinkedIn.
Right.
I'm here to tell you there is no sustainable presence on LinkedIn
Mm.
except posting every day. It is
Right.
however, whatever your frequency is that gets you what you need. If it's 3 times a week, awesome. But basically, if you are not continually staying top of mind, uh, there was very little connection to anyone looking for me on LinkedIn that was offering any kind of work or had questions or whatever. So that was when I recognized that after kind of dropping back to, 1 or 2 posts a day, and then all of the numbers just went back to where they were before, you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, I was like, well, I mean, that's not going to work to build the audience the way that I thought it would. So
Yeah.
it was an experiment. And I'm not saying it wasn't a success because I got business out of it. I made a lot of connections. I learned a ton. And I think I shared some good content that people really enjoyed and some people took good things from. So
Yeah.
I'm not, I'm not bothered by that. But the realization was, okay, this is not the type of process where you're not setting up any kind of inbound traffic that is going to continue to generate leads or make stuff happen just because you have a presence here.
Yeah. I think I've noticed that as well. Well, my particular product, when we talk about business consulting and
Yeah.
and the same with you, like writing a book, like these are not quick decisions that people make
Right.
to bring us in to have that discussion. I mean, it's usually pretty personal, whether it's
Yeah.
a book or I'm showing me your financials, right? Like the P&L is like guarded closely, as is the story that I want to tell, that I've been thinking about. So I think in both our cases, that process is something that takes a lot of time, and you're absolutely right about the presence on LinkedIn. I mean, I went I got kind of busy with my own work, and I think I went down to like one post a week for a couple weeks. And then I went on vacation as well. So I didn't post it all while I was on vacation, and then like the week previous, whatever. And yeah, like I was punished for it. The algorithm was like, oh, this dude's not interested in LinkedIn. We're not, so it's like, okay, I had to get like ramp back up. But yes, the inbound lead generation is a process that takes some time. But so what happened now? You did this from March till now. What made you want to get back in and start telling the story? Are you done? I mean, obviously you're not, because you're still getting
I
notifications.
mean, I'll tell you, I will probably continue to do it. Reason being, I work from home by myself, and this is a way to get out of the house, just get some exercise. And the truth is, depending on the day, there are times when I can, like, if we don't go to church on a Sunday morning and I'm heading to the grocery store at 10 to pick up, stuff to make lunch, in the hour and a half until I come back to start cooking, I can make an extra $40. So
Mm.
and it's I talked in my posts about the gamification of the system. There's a little bit of an adrenaline rush when you're competing to pick up jobs. And then you have the dopamine push, the little rat hitting the button so they get the snack, because you're getting that money in your pocket immediately and you can actually withdraw it. About an hour after you do a delivery, you can withdraw the delivery fee and all of, whatever the tip was. So it's, you could be pulling, and you can, I think, do that 5 times a day or something on Uber. So you can be pulling that out and taking care of, things in real time. So if anybody's like desperate for cash, I highly suggest, if you've got a smartphone that has decent service and you live in an area where there's enough, business to provide you with work, it's a great way to throw a couple $100 in your pocket so you can go do something else.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm not gonna probably discard it, because it's a stream of revenue that just kind of sits in my pocket, and it requires nothing of me unless I want to work.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah.
So the reason, though, series of unfortunate events. I went one day, I got into another app that's owned by Walmart, which is their grocery delivery app. And it actually pays better than any of the others. But the problem is that their system, like everything that they do, it looks really great on the outside. And once you start working with it, it's kind of like having to make a journey to a government office. It just turns dark really, really, really freaking fast. And so you get in, and what you recognize is that, first of all, they expect you to show up in a window delivery, and they're going to score you based on that. And you're going to get job leads based on that. Okay. But that window means nothing to them. So their employees, who are getting paid by the hour, will take as much of their sweet time as they feel is necessary to load you up. And you have to sit there for 30 minutes if you don't want to see your score start to tank before you can cancel that delivery. So that was one of the things. And I mean, you've talked to me enough, you've seen my posts enough. I'm not going to sit silent on that. If there's a number for me to call to complain about it, they're going to hear it from me,
Yeah.
And this continued to happen. And so every time that it would happen, I would call in. That really wasn't so much of a problem, but I think it put me on their radar as kind of a troublemaker, which is fine. I didn't do anything that I'm not proud of in that situation. Because to me, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to stay here forever, but some of these people are going to continue to do this gig. And I'm looking at them and they're sitting here quietly just accepting this crap. And that's not cool. You're asking them to donate, an hour and a half, 2 hours of their day just so they can be a grocery delivery driver. And that's not cool. There's no reason for that.
Right.
And frankly, it shouldn't be legal. There's some things that need to change in the way that the United States of America handles contract labor. That's one of them. If someone is expected to give time, that time needs to be compensated at the minimum wage.
That makes sense.
Because there's no other job where anyone can ask you to do that. So that doesn't make any sense. And it's not a salaried position where they're like, well, you're getting way above minimum wage, so you're going to do what we say, or you can go find something else to do. And people will suck it up and take it because they're making 80 grand a year.
Right.
But in this situation, that's not guaranteed, even if you could get to that level. So there needs to be some compensation in there. And anytime that you approach the subject, basically you're getting, this low-level person who to you is the face of this app, this system, because they're the only ones they let you talk to, but they have zero power. Okay.
Right.
But then it also got to the point where people during the pandemic have gotten a little grouchy. And so I pull up to this one guy's house one day, and he's got his trash cans kind of sitting in his driveway. So I pull in a little bit catty corner behind this SUV that's there, and I'm delivering his groceries. And his wife comes out and she's putting kids in the car. And she kind of sighs and looks at my truck. And I said, can I finish this real quick? Or do you need me to move my vehicle? Well, she gets mad at that. She goes in the house and she tells her husband, and I didn't even realize I had done this, that I've one, blocked her car in the driveway intentionally, which there was no one out there trying to get into this vehicle when I pulled up. I've smashed into their trash can, which I think one of my front fender kind of grazed against this ginormous plastic behemoth city trash can, the big wheelie ones with the top that flips up.
Yeah.
And now I'm raging at her.
Wow.
And he comes to the door with his cell phone on, telling me he's making a recording for the police. I'm trying to deliver the man's groceries. And I can lose my cool, but I have not said a word that I would not say in church at this point in time.
Yeah.
I asked politely if I needed to move my vehicle. So he's like, why are you blocking my wife in? Why did you smash into our trash cans? Why are you yelling and cussing at her right now? I said, I haven't cussed at anybody. And he starts swearing at me. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just trying to deliver your groceries. And so I make the delivery and he's like, you won't be working for them anymore. And I'm like, okay, hot shot, have at it. Please get me fired. I mean, I don't really want to deal with people like you anyway. And so I get back in the car and I leave, and I don't hear a thing about it from the company, but I'm sure it gets chalked up somewhere. I think I had to make a report about my side of the story, and they heard me out and they were like, well, that sounds reasonable. And that's what, when he showed us the video, you were completely calm. You didn't, seem to be handling yourself in the way that he suggested at all. And I was like, well, that's because I wasn't. I don't know what to tell you about that. But you get cussed at by a lot of people. I got threatened by one black guy because just huge, not ginormous man came to I only mentioned that he's black because he was very threatening and scary. And it was just like this deal where he looked at me like, listen, white boy, I'm going to tear you apart. And I was in a complex that was, not somewhere I would normally go. And it just was like, I'm not afraid of you, but you're very threatening, sir. And I don't appreciate you threatening to kick my behind because they didn't put the 2 Pepsis that you ordered on your Taco Bell order. It's like, and eventually he was so mad about it that I was like, you know what? I just went to Taco Bell. I bought the 2 Pepsis and I brought them back.
Oh, wow.
And when he came to the door, he was in tears and he was like, I can't believe you did this. I was like, well, you seem like you were having a really bad day. So this is all I got to offer. And he tried to pay me for it. I was like, no, it's cool. It's like, just the next time that you answer the door for a delivery driver, remember, we are going through some shit out here too. So, because I've had to deal with, several people like you today. And he was like, I can't believe you did this. I'm, usually if I see a white guy like you, then, he's not like this at all. And I was like, dude, that's not me. I don't know what to tell you other than, you have to be real careful. I'm not saying don't notice the color of people's skin because it does make a difference, but respect them for who they are, but assume that they're on your side until you find out otherwise. Because I wasn't trying to cause you any problems,
Yeah.
Because I just showed him the app and I was like, look, they didn't put it on the list. So I don't know what to tell you. I got other stuff I got to get done. And he was just not having it. But the final straw was I picked up a delivery for groceries. And I stopped by OnQ, which is a convenience store here in this part of the country, a big one, and to fill up my little refillable thermal cup, with Diet Dr. Pepper and use the bathroom because I hadn't stopped all day. I'd been driving for like 4 hours. And I get back in my car and I get a call from random number. I don't know who it is. So I answer the phone. Well, I was just wondering where my groceries are. I said, well, ma'am, I picked them up at the store. On my way there, didn't go out of my way to get to this station. I stopped, to take a quick bathroom break and grab something cold to drink because, well, that's just not acceptable. I said, ma'am, I'm an independent contractor and I set my own schedule and I'm sorry that this offends you. And she was like, well, it's just, you're taking a long time. I was like, well, I'm really not. I'm right within the delivery window still, and I'll be there in about 5 minutes and I'll bring you your groceries. So I pull up and she comes storming out of her house. She about mid-level. She looks like she's probably 65 years old. She's been hitting me about chest level, little lady. Pushes her glasses up on her nose and just proceeds to cuss me out right there on her front yard and tell me to get back in my car. And she's got her phone and she's like, I'm on the phone with the police right now. I was like, what? Why are you on the phone with the police? well, I just felt like the way that you responded to me was very disrespectful. I was like, man, they record all my calls. You're welcome to go back and have them listen to it and file a complaint. Can I just leave your groceries on your front porch? And I'm holding this big plastic tub with about 60 pounds of groceries in it at this point, right?
Yeah.
Trying to head to her porch and set her stuff down and leave. And she says, well, you need to know that I have a weapon. And I was like, what? She has a pistol, Lewis, in her pocket.
Jesus.
She proceeds to threaten to shoot me for being so disrespectful if I don't get off her GD lawn. And she's on the phone with the police. And so at this point, I raise my voice and I'm like, officer, I want you to know I'm here and I'm willing to leave, but I'm afraid to turn my back on this woman because she has a firearm that she has shown me and she is threatening to use it on me. And I'm a little nervous at this point. So I just need you to know that I am not trying to cause a problem, but someone needs to come and check on her, you know? And I'm trying to get this information to the other end of the phone line because I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen here. I'm not particularly afraid of her because I'm looking at her and she hasn't pulled the gun out. And if she reaches for it, what I'm going to do is launch this tub.
Yeah.
And it's going to take her out. She's probably going to end up hurt, but I'm not going home with a bullet in me just so I can deliver some groceries. Right. So this all goes down. I take the groceries back to the store because she refuses delivery. I tell them what happened. They're like, well, who was it? And they don't even have a blacklist, Lewis, where they can refuse to deliver to that customer anymore.
Wow.
They were like, well, the next time that we see her name come up, we'll just cancel the order, which is what they have to do. But then they get in trouble for canceling too many orders and stuff.
Wow.
I called the police. I filed a report. The officer was laughing. When he called me back, he's like, holy cow, man, what did you do? And I told him, he goes, well, that sounds right from what I heard, you know. And he's like, I don't know. She says her husband had a stroke and she's the only one managing things and people just don't understand. And I tried to tell her that it wasn't okay to bring a gun to a grocery delivery. I was like, what the heck? And he's like, well, I suggested, you know, maybe just don't show anybody the gun if you feel you need to have it or whatever, because it's Oklahoma.
What?
So it's what they call constitutional carry up here, right? You're in Texas, right?
No, I'm in Arizona, but Arizona. Yeah, we got the same
you
thing.
Probably have the same law. So here in Oklahoma, you can conceal carry with a permit, but you can just strap on a pistol anytime you want and go pretty much anywhere except a government building, which is ironic.
Right. Yeah.
But you know, I mean, you can show up in church with your 357 mag just strapped on.
I've seen it.
Go on in.
Yeah.
Well, and I used to see this when we lived up in Wyoming when I was a kid, but there's a reason up there because you never know when you're going to meet a bear or a rattlesnake or an actual cattle rustler.
Yeah.
You know, and have to deal with that.
That's usually who you see doing it out here, right? Like the guy looks like he just walked off the farm and he's got his 40.
So most of the guys packing out here right now, except the older guys who are, you know, still playing John Wayne and have certain political stickers on their car, are mostly weed farmers.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I totally get that. I mean, if I had, you know, 500 acres of weed and I was going to be out there doing my thing, and I would probably carry a firearm, you know what I'm saying? And you just look at him for a minute, you're going, what? That's a really nice gun that guy's packing, but he doesn't look like he can afford it. And then you see his nice truck and you're like, oh, yeah, he got into the pot business. That's what the deal is here. And so anyway, but yeah, so it was that. And then, you know, Walmart calls me and they take my statement and they said they listened to the call and everything seemed fine. Well, about a week later, they just deactivate my account with no explanation. And I was like, well, okay, I see how it is. That's fine. You know, and once that happened, then deliveries started to decline on the other apps as well, which has been a steady thing. Also, the prices were going down for each individual delivery. As more and more people get back out into the world, it's a less profitable thing. So you kind of have to pick your times and your places. But if you're in the right location, you really can still make some money at it. But that's why I'm stepping back from it sooner than I was planning to. Okay. I was working towards coming around to January, probably November, when it started getting really cold outside, launching some other stuff and moving back into doing some of that. But now I'm in a position where I'm kind of having to hybrid the whole situation. But I picked up some work this last week, so I'm pretty good. And probably going to take, I am starting a gig with a company that rewrites LinkedIn profiles. So
Oh,
that should be
nice.
a pretty steady deal, and it'll be pretty simple. Pays really well. And I won't have to go, hunting for my own customers on that. So basically what I am doing now, Lewis, is diversifying my streams of revenue
Mm-hmm.
so that I can maintain my independence, not have to clock in on anybody's schedule and do the thing. So
Oh, that's awesome.
that's my story, dude.
I mean, that's a hell of a story. And, I think you kind of pegged the target driver correctly with the, single individual who, has time, is willing to do those evening delivery type things.
Yeah.
Um,
Although I will say this, I met one guy, he and his wife do Uber Eats, both of them. They don't have any kids. And they're making, between the two of them, they're pulling down like 1,800 a week,
wow.
And then on top of that, he told me about another deal that's called Citizen Shippers, that is mostly pet transport, cross country pet transport. So like you might drive 100 miles, pick up a couple Lhasa Apsos, take them to Chicago, and get paid $1,500 for 2 days worth of driving. So there is still money to be made out there, if that's really what you want to do. And if I was young and I wanted to travel and do the thing, and I didn't want to be an over the road truck driver, which seems like a lot of scheduled hard labor, I would probably get into that citizen shipper thing, get me a little camper, maybe a van so you can put more stuff in, and just start hauling stuff for people, because that pays really, really well, actually.
Yeah, over the road truckers are making pretty good money right now too. So
Yeah, I've heard they're offering, like, there was a guy on NPR the other day from a trucking school up in Kansas City saying that it'd gone up to about 75K a year to
yeah,
start.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and it's a tough job, but that's pretty good money. If you're 22 and you're just sitting there trying to figure out what you want to do, I think Lewis would agree with me. This is probably a better idea than taking that GI Bill. Um,
Yeah. I just
because
think
there's no
about,
telling what kind of shit we may be getting into soon.
well, the way I used to pay for college, like I worked on the weekends for a handyman.
Yeah,
And I carried fence posts and cement bags and dug trenches and dug post holes, just basically the body stuff that he didn't want to do.
right.
Right. And he paid me like $8.50 an hour. And I thought that was great money. Right. Then,
Mm-hmm.
and I think about this now, like what you were just talking about, like a 2-day trip or whatever, like something that, if I didn't have class on Friday, or if my class ended like 9 a.m. on Friday morning, like do a delivery over the weekend, make $1,500. Like, dude, I could have, gotten my PhD, right? Like I just couldn't
Right.
afford it,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's a thing where the other part to it is it leaves you more flexible, than some other options, than borrowing a bunch of money, or committing your life to Uncle Sam
yeah,
for however long. Which I am not denigrating that. You know how I feel. We've had
sure.
those conversations.
Yep.
But I think there's a lot of guys who make that choice just based on feeling like they don't have anything else to do.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
sure you served with some of them,
I
and
did.
if that's not an intentional choice, man, don't go there.
Right.
That's my personal feeling.
Yeah. I've had a few
There's
friends.
other things you can do.
They've asked me about that. And, well, now the conversation will probably be different, but over the last 20 years, whenever somebody asked me like, oh,
Yeah.
should I join the army to pay for whatever? My question was always, do you want to go to war? Right. And that was,
Hopefully we're getting out of that business. I mean, that would be nice, but what that means is there's going to be fewer opportunities, though, because we're not going to be able to sustain that kind of recruitment, I don't think, if we're not
yeah.
going to the forever war.
Right. Well, but that was the question was, are you willing? Do you want to go to war? Well, no, I don't want to go to war. Then the army's not for you.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like unless you want to do that and go to combat. Well, they tell me that it doesn't matter what they tell you. I'm asking you here, like, do you understand you're going to spend a year in the desert living in a little trailer, maybe if you're lucky, and getting rocketed and shot at and stuff like that. Now, if that doesn't seem like something you're interested in doing, the army is not the right place.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's it, man.
I love it. I think it's really neat. It's a very interesting perspective. I honestly, I would have never thought that a 65-year-old lady pointing a gun at me for delivering groceries was like a possibility.
Me either. And I live in Oklahoma, dude, where stuff like that, we're like, here's the deal. When it comes to crazy shit happening in the United States of America, Florida's king, and then Texas and Oklahoma are running neck and neck for runner up. Because we can't touch Florida. Florida, man, he's got a style all his own, and he does his thing. And you just read it and you go, wow, I didn't even know that was humanly possible.
Well, I appreciate the perspective, and hopefully somebody else does, and maybe somebody that's thinking about it.
Sure. If you give me one more minute, I'll tell you why. What is going on with me now?
Yeah, let's go. Give it.
Okay, so I am working on something called the Firefly Project, and the idea is to really, what I'm trying to do is isolate the steps that we go through when we transform ourselves in life, because I don't think we do it very intentionally. I think it sneaks up on us. But one of the things that I have learned from studying this process, transitions and transformations, and is that you have to stop being what you were before you can engage in that next process. Okay. Whether that means you completely step away from it or your mindset changes, you can't continue eating leaves as a caterpillar and wrap yourself in a cocoon at the same time.
Ooh.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You got to do something different to break the cycle and get your mind back where it needs to go. And that's what I was trying to do here, was a hard reset. It's why I came out of that, because I knew that in order to engage in that process and figure out what my final form will be, is I had to do something that I knew wouldn't require every ounce of brain power I had in order to engage in earning a living. So it was kind of setting some things in neutral, even though it ended up being a lot more stressful than I thought it was going to be honest. I really thought it was going to be simple. And if you could just pick up $5 an hour, $5 per order deals every 10 minutes, then that's no big deal. Like I said, you're making your $60 an hour. You go work 4 or 5 hours a day. You got enough money to take care of things. You go home and you do your other thing. And but it's not like that. The reality was a little harsher than I thought. But in order to get past where you are now, to really jump into a transformation, you're going to have to stop being what it is you are in order to move into the next phase. And so that's what this was about. And I'll be talking more about that soon. My idea is that I want to simplify this to give us, I'm looking at some research and different things that's out there on transitions to try and pick out what steps are common. What steps do people typically go through when they go to make a major life change?
Yeah.
And how can we do that intentionally? How can we plan for it? And how can we make it something that we are in the business of doing, like on a cyclical basis, right? Because as humans, we tend to wait until the shit hits the fan, and then we, 100%. Got to change everything, right?
Yep.
And if we could do it better, if we could also gain some language on how to discuss this, like there was a woman that I cannot think of her name, but she created the 5 stages of grief, which we've all heard, right? And it gave us a way to talk about end of life and how it affects those of us who survive and those of us who are leaving. Because before that, what we used to do was lock dying people in a room. Nobody really talked to them. She started interviewing dying people to find out what was going on with them.
Yeah.
And then she started interviewing their families to see how that interaction was taking place. And she came up with, these things. Well, that's what I want to do. I want to simplify it to that point where we kind of have a roadmap. Here's what you can expect. When you go into your next transition, these are some things you're probably going to feel. Maybe not exactly in this order. You may not go through all of them. It's the same thing they say about the stages of grief. Not everybody experiences it exactly the same way, but it's fairly definable. It gives you some things to hold on to. It's kind of like, if you're going through a treacherous situation and somebody stretches a rope across this area where you've got to get past, and you can hold on to that to actually get yourself to the other side.
Yeah.
So you're not just completely lost in the storm. And that's what I'm working on. And that's what I want to kind of bring out. So we'll see what happens.
Exciting. I'm looking forward.
I hope so. It should be cool. It should be interesting. I may have you on my I want to do a podcast to get it started and kind of interview some people who've done stuff like that. And you're one of the ones that I definitely have on my list. So
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. Always.
all
Always.
right, man. That's
Awesome. Well,
it.
thanks so much,
That's all I
man.
had to say.
And have a good one. And, is there anything besides this Firefly project that people can get in touch with you or anything you're looking for?
If anybody's looking to write a book right now, I'd love to take on, a couple of clients. But other than that, or if you just have writing projects that you need done, or if you're looking to have your profile redone, I mostly handle the writing side of it. I'm not necessarily a one-stop shop, but I can definitely advise on all the other stuff and would love to discuss anything with them. And they can just find me on LinkedIn under Mark R. Morris Jr. as always.
Sounds great. Well, thank
Thanks,
you,
man.
sir.